Good morning. Ken Lasseson here. This is a continuation of the last video, which dealt with a family group of microbiomes. After a good night's sleep, it occurred to me that there's an additional report when we have a large number of microbiome samples that may be beneficial for the purposes of my original goal, which was to determine familial patterns which are possibly connected to DNA. So we were looking at it by trying to find those associated with medical condition, etc. But to flip it around and do a slightly different way, which is that if a particular bacteria is seen in 95% of people who have submitted samples from a particular lab, keyword a particular lab, and we only see it in this group of 7 people samples, 15% of the chance, then that implies that potentially the DNA mixture causes this particular bacteria to be underrepresented, or the reverse. If we have a very high number in this family group of 7 and a very low number in the general population, it would imply that their DNA familial pattern has resulted in a propensity for a particular bacteria to grow and to be fruitful. So, in front of you, you have the new, latest, just pushed up this morning page, and this is a third item, which is the frequency. This will only show up if you have, I believe, 5 samples available or more. And the reason we restrict it to 5 is if it's less than 5, what you could get for differences could happen too much by randomness, which means that you are basically acting on something with low reliability, and I prefer to have higher reliability where practical. So we click here, and we have there. What I'm going to do to illustrate is I'm going to exclude the Y, different DNA mixture, and it's only one report at the moment, which is by bacteria taxonomy. Click that. A few seconds later, you get the results. For example, this first family, 80% of the samples had it. Only about 45% of the population has it. So this particular bacteria is overrepresented. The next family is underrepresented. And there you can go down and you can see that there's generally about a 30% difference between them or more. And we have a total of 35, so we could just go over and do it. I set the differences up reasonably appropriate for the number of samples coming in. The more samples that come in, the smaller the difference will become to be shown up on the list, and the fewer the samples, the bigger the difference has to be shown up. So we have everybody listed there, and we could say, okay, let's first see the ones which are below the expected number, and here we have 90, that's 50%. So 50% less, 90% of the people have this particular genus. In this population of people, all DNA related, is only 40%. Then we have 80 and 30, another one which is 40%, and now we go down to genus levels, etc. So those are ones which are underrepresented in the sample. Flip side, we can go and see which is overrepresented, and we see diaster is here, etc. And you can follow up by next push. I'll have that clickable so you can go and see what we know about this particular bacteria and its association. So again, the same thing. Very simple, very straightforward, showing what should be expected and what is not. Now let's go back for illustration purposes and say, okay, what we are going to do is we are going to take the numbers down. So we are going to actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of the healthy siblings, or relatively healthy siblings. Keep the mother, keep the father, toss in the aunt, toss in all the samples of the person. Now when you click the report, you end up with a shorter list because the difference has to be bigger. In this case, we have 45% difference here, 50% difference here, 50% here. We have gapping differences of about 50% between the people in the small samples and the reference population. These will ideally be the bacteria you would want to write down, make a note of, and then to hand pick them in your microbiome to do a hand-picked collection. So that's basically the little addition which is just added, which I think hits the goal, which is to determine DNA-based familiar patterns of particular bacteria patterns which are common across the family. If we could go back and do one last one, and what we could do is uncheck those, and what we're going to do is we'll toss in the wife, we'll exclude the parents, we'll toss in the brother, the sister, so we end up with a much smaller sample, and let's see what happens. We have only one bacteria in the healthy group which is way off normal, and that is a particular genus. It's a very rarely occurring, but for some reason all of the people in that group has that particular bacteria, including the wife, so it could be related to diet. Or it could just be randomness. Again, when you have a small number of data points, randomness gets bigger and bigger and bigger factor to contend with. So the more data points, the more accurate we can get, the more certain we have of statistical significance. Okay, that's basically it. Basically, okay, we can see a familiar pattern there and we can test for it.